Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Friday again. This is Michaela Conley, HP CareerNet, and Health Promotion Live, most obviously. Happy April Fool's Day. Bill London is our presenter today, and he is a professor of health science at California State University, Los Angeles. And when I approached Bill, I think it started with a conversation on the heater, if I remember correctly. We had maybe we had another topic that you thought not so science-based, a little on the frou-frou side. So I suggested you come and talk about it, and you purposefully chose today, which I think was brilliant on your part.
Well, very good. I think April Fool's should be a very important holiday. It's the day where we make a conscious effort not to fool ourselves. Richard Feynman said science is what we have learned about how to keep from fooling ourselves. And so being literate about science becomes very, very important. This is about healthy skepticism, and it's about testimonials. I'm going to tell you a little bit about both. Mark Twain expressed gratitude for the fools because for many of us our success is owed to the fools, and I should recognize that we are all prone to being fooled in the health marketplace and in life in general, and that's one of the reasons we have a skeptics movement that is developed. Skepticism is often not what people think it is. There was an old school version of what skepticism was about, and that was the possibility. That was the old school skeptic were the ones who doubted the possibility of knowledge of reality. But the skeptics movement really is about questioning the validity and authenticity of what purports to be knowledge. And that becomes that's a healthy outlook on life. Let me tell you what skepticism isn't. First of all, it's not cynicism. A cynic is a sneering fault finder, one who doubts or denies the goodness of human motives, and who often displays his attitude by sneers, sarcasm, and other things like that. The word comes from a small, ancient Greek school of philosophers who were known for having uncouth and aggressive manners. Their symbol was the dog. And cynics are often people who are very much interested in finding... Something's ringing there. You have ringing.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
My bad.
Let's see. Cynics are often the people who are questioning people's motives. They're interested in the idea that people make the claims that they do because they're in it for the money. And while it's always prudent to follow the money, skepticism digs much more deeply than that. Skepticism isn't simply denialism. Skeptics are interested in the evidence, are interested in reason, and are interested in the totality of the evidence, not in simply rejecting all kinds of claims. I'm sorry, skepticism isn't about being comforted, because skeptics are interested in truth-seeking, and sometimes the truth isn't always so comforting. But I think some people prefer comforting lies to uncomfortable truths, and they seek out knowledge accordingly. But skeptics are open-minded seekers of truth. Richard Feynman was a very good example of that. And talked about how important it is for not fooling ourselves. The quotation that I use, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool, was a caution that Feynman made towards scientists, and that scientists are very prone to being fooled. But it applies to everybody, and it applies to consumers in the health marketplace. So the approach to skepticism is to look at things carefully, and that's what Feynman did. Feynman got a lot of national attention during the Challenger disaster. He was the one who did that little experiment to show the faulty O-rings. And it was all about looking at things carefully. The word skeptic has the same root as the word scope, meaning to peer about, to watch, to look closely. And that's the approach that we take in skepticism. That's why skepticism is a lot of fun and very exciting. On to testimonials. And there's a little testimonial in this little photograph. The testimonial is the red thing there. It's a red heart-shaped little ticker, a little clock. And this was the Wizard of Oz, who really wasn't much of a wizard at all. He didn't really want anyone looking particularly carefully at what he was doing. When the curtain opened in a very famous scene in the movie, that was hiding him, not the wizard, not the special effects wizard he was pretending to be. He said, "Ignore that man around the curtain." Well, skeptics like to look at things closely. The testimonial is all he could give the Tin Man who was seeking a heart. And in this case, a testimonial, all it really means in this case is it's a tribute, just like in a testimonial dinner. And testimonials are usually expressions of appreciation. So in the world of health-related testimonials, they are statements in support of particular truths. They are little stories. They are anecdotes. And they are typically the ones about benefits received by a consumer. And they're characterized by their subjectivity. Testimonials are anecdotes that lack verifiable evidence of their veracities. And here are some examples of testimonials. And I just found them. And I found them in a place where I was very disappointed to see them. They were in a journal article as part of a table. This was part of the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine for a treatment that really has no scientific basis. But if you ask enough people who are given the treatment, you'll find some claims of particular kinds of benefits. But at least to the author's credit, some of the statements that they did include in the table did not include quite the same level of praise. So this is an unusual place to see testimonials. There are anecdotes that we often see in journals, and they're called case reports. And case reports tend to be very detailed in terms of documentation, measurements taken, but testimonials often don't have any documentation behind them. They rely on memory that may be flawed, may be distorted. So we will see case reports in literature, and I'll show you an example of a case report later in the presentation. There are four usual places where we encounter testimonials. And the first one is advertising. The first place we encounter it is in advertising. Now what's advertising? Well, advertising is mass media. It's impersonal, and there is payment made to deliver the message. It's a sponsor is paying for them. It comes in various forms. The basic categories are print and electronic. This is a newsletter, supposedly. It looks like a newsletter. It has a price on it. It has a year. It looks like it has an issue. But what this is an example of what I've described as advertising mailers in disguise. It's made to look like a newsletter, but everything about it is advertising. This is the cover. There are 2 pages inside and a back cover. The 2 pages inside are all testimonials. But the most important thing to note in this newsletter is right at the bottom, which you probably can't see. And that's the disclaimer. The advertiser wants you to see everything but the disclaimer. But since I'm a skeptic, I'm going to look closely at the disclaimer, and here I've blown it up for you. These testimonials do not imply that similar results will happen with your use of the products. These testimonials are not intended to recommend any supplement as a drug, as a diagnosis for a specific illness or conditions, nor as a product to eliminate diseases or other medical conditions or complications. We make no medical claim to the benefits of any of our products to improve the medical condition of individuals. However, all the testimonials that are inside would lead almost any reasonable person to believe that they're suggesting that there are these kinds of benefits. Now, you will see disclaimers like this throughout the Internet. For example, there is this. This is what a blogger at White Coat Underground, Pal MD, has called the Quack Miranda warning, and it's been picked up. I did a Google search yesterday on the exact phrase that you see here, and I came up with 22,600,000 hits. This is what people, by law, have to put down when they're promoting things that are unapproved drugs, and it's just on, and as Pal MD says, it's on just about every Womeister's website. I see dozens of patients every day, and I never Mirandize them, so what's the deal? He also has some other explanations that are why this disclaimer is also there. But it's a little legal protection. I was shocked too. I was thinking I might have done the search wrong. But there's a lot being promoted. Another way that testimonials are promoted are through publicity. And publicity differs from advertising in that it's not paid directly by the sponsor. It's a non-personal form of advertising, meaning it's mass media. But the payment by the sponsor is not direct to the outlet. However, there may be payments involved if you want to get things publicized. So people hire publicists, and then they wind up getting on talk shows. They wind up getting magazine coverage of them. Here's a case where Oprah didn't get particularly good publicity. She wasn't too happy about it. If you're interested in this is one place you may want to look if you're interested in the kinds of things that have gotten promoted on Oprah's program. But a Skeptical Inquirer recent issue had an article by Martin Gardner on what kinds of things Oprah has promoted. Another way that testimonials get promoted is through personal selling. And these are conversations. This is a personal means of communication. This is direct, usually face-to-face. and it involves conversations and presentations with prospective buyers. And this slide is illustrating what's called multi-level or network marketing. For health products, it's become a very popular way of selling. And the people who get involved with this are interested in combining notions of health and high-level wellness very often with notions of wealth. And what they do is they become distributors of the products. They use the products and share testimonials about their experiences, and then they recruit other people to buy the products from them and to be distributors to others, and it creates multiple levels. What, unfortunately, this kind of marketing also increases the price every step along the way. Very few people actually can make money doing this, which is not disclosed in this kind of marketing. Often it can be illegal. I'll let the courts decide when that is the case. But virtually nothing. If you had anything that was really of value, you would not want to do something to artificially inflate the price when selling it, and that's what multi-level marketing does. So a good source of information on multi-level marketing is Stephen Barrett's website, mlmwatch.org. You'll see some examples of some of the companies that are involved in these kinds of activities, and you can see Dr. Barrett's thoughts on these issues. And then the other means of personal communication is not necessarily trying to sell anybody anything, but it's the everyday, how we hear about health. And frankly, this is how I became a health educator. I was very interested in all sorts of family and friends who shared information about health, and they shared testimonials, and everybody seeming to have opinions about what's good for you, what's bad for you, and I became a health educator to try to sort that out. But testimonials spread this way, and when I have conversations with all sorts of people, and they ask me about things, I often say, I don't think there's any scientific evidence to support that. Well, people often have what they think, what is the trump card to throw at me. And the trump card they throw at me is this: it worked for me. And I am then silenced. Although I recognize there is more to it than that, and that's what this presentation is about. Okay, now, let me show you something I encountered on the internet in 2002. I don't think the site where I found this is up anymore, but you can see that it is a request for a particular kind of information. But they're not looking for it to come particularly, well, they're looking for some specific kinds of characteristics from this medical breakthrough. And let's read it. I am looking for a novel medical procedure or new medication to change the outcome of an illness or event for a patient. The change must be dramatic and clearly different from past patients, and there should be an emotional hook to the story. Ideal subjects would be children or women, but it is not an absolute requirement as long as there is a woman, wife, mother, girlfriend, doctor in the story somewhere. There must also be a happy ending. Patient is now well or on the road to an expected full recovery. Please help. I'm letting you think for a second about who in the world was making this request. Well, they were also making, around the same time, this next request. Subject, looking for a weight loss success. The summary is, I need a story about a woman between age 20 and 50 who had a huge weight loss, minimum 100 pounds, or dropped several sizes. The method for the weight loss could be a new or unusual diet or a proven weight loss plan. Please help. Now, this illustrates an approach that's very different from that of the skeptic. Remember I said that skeptics are not people who are necessarily looking for what's comfortable. We're trying to seek the truth, the closest approximation we can get to it. But a lot of people are interested in being comforted and to find comforting stories like this. Well, anyway, I found this on a website that served as a clearinghouse for journalists who were looking to find various kinds of assistants or experts or people to include in the stories that they want to tell. And I just signed up for another such site. And I'm now going to be getting emails from these and see what kinds of things they're looking for. The particular journalist was working for this magazine that is one of the top 100 magazines in the United States in terms of circulation. In 2008, it was more than 1.3 million copies. And you may have seen this particular magazine on the newsstands. That's where they get sold at the checkout, and a lot of grocery counters. And this is a fairly typical cover of Woman's World, but this one in particular got a considerable amount of attention because the stories in there for both Kristen on the cover and Kim were exposed as not being at all true. There's Kim before and Kim after, but it's a phony after. That's not Kim in the after at all. But that was one of the after photos. And he had somebody else, and there was even different photos used. This is, Kim is the operator of a website called Kimkins. And here's a little news about Kimkins. And Kim is actually Heidi Kimberly Diaz. California County Superior Court ruled in a suit against Kimkins. They engaged in false advertising and fraudulent business practices. The court found that the defendants falsely represented the success of the Kimkins diet in that Heidi Diaz, as creator, lied about her representations concerning the amount of weight she lost. The court also found the after-diet images promoted to be Heidi Diaz, also known as Kimmer, followed the alleged use of the Kimkins diet posted on the Kimkins.com website, and advertisements during the class period were not Heidi. And there were photographs of 41 models were used with false testimonials on the Kimkins website. Court awarded $1.8 million in this diet fraud case. Woman's World wound up apologizing some time ago about this particular instance. But I should point out that Woman's World has these little cover stories all the time. And how much verification is there of these stories? Does Woman's World provide follow-ups to see if anybody gained the weight back after they lost it? I don't think so. This is the Kimkins. This is the Kimkins diet website. It's still operating, and you see that there are little stories about people who are on the site. But they now have to have a disclaimer in the website. The disclaimer is on the bottom of the homepage. It reads, "Court awards over $1.8 million in Kimkins diet." I just read the disclaimer to you. That was the disclaimer. So that's there, but it's in small print, and it's way on the bottom, and you have to scroll down to get to it. Well, testimonials are appealing. People like good stories with happy endings. That's what keeps Woman's World in business. They're telling happy stories with happy endings. I don't have time to tell you my story. There's my little boy. Here's an expert storyteller. And he knew the power of a good story. And it's important to recognize that when a story is told with enough sincerity, people will mistake it for validity. Sincerity does not equal validity. Twain said the most outrageous lies that can be invented will find believers if a man only tells them with all his might. H.L. Mencken said the men that American people admire the most extravagantly are the most daring liars. The men who detest the men they detest the most violently are those who try to tell them the truth. Here's a rather successful liar. In fact, we're talking about the most successful mail-order promoter of health products there have been. So here's an example of how testimonials have been faked, and mail order is how it's been done. The person pictured in the before-after photos for a baldness remedy is the late Almond Glenn Braswell, and this became in the news a few years ago because of some activities that came to light. Now, Braswell has had over 138 health-related false representation complaints filed against him by the U.S. Postal Service, which really isn't filing these kinds of complaints anymore. Now, he received over $2 million for a worthless baldness cure in one 6-month period. He pled guilty to mail fraud charges involving those fake photos. He was sentenced to 5 years probation. He's had other little problems. And around 2000, he donated $175,000 to the Republican Party, $100,000 directly to the Bush campaign, and it wound up leading to Jeb Bush being named as the author of an article that appeared in this Journal of Longevity. Journal of Longevity was one of his little advertising outlets, also had Journal of Longevity Research. But it's really a product catalog for the kinds of things that Braswell was saying. And the article with Bush as the author promoted dubious dietary supplements, and it attributed statements to Bush that had been added without his permission or knowledge. Now, why was he donating this money? Well, it turns out he was involved in a divorce and a custody case, and he wanted to get pardoned. He needed to be pardoned to win the custody case. So he was a Republican, and he went the Republican route. That didn't work. But then he wound up going to the Clinton. And remember, at the end of the Clinton administration, there were several pardons. And most of the attention went to the Mark Rich pardon. But what wound up happening was, by the way, when the Republicans discovered who they were dealing with Braswell, they returned the money. That's why that route didn't work. But he wound up donating money to the Clinton campaign, and it came through Hugh Rodham, $200,000 deposited in a secret family bank account. The National Enquirer broke the story, but it was later picked up by the mass media, by the mainstream media. National Enquirer, unlike mainstream media, pays sources, but the mainstream media verified the story. So in other words, he got $200,000 through Hugh Rodham, and that led to his pardon. But he wound up having considerable legal problems after that. He died a few years later. So the pardon didn't stick exactly. Okay. Now here's somebody who's wrote a book talking about what I'm now moving into is moving away from how testimonials have been faked. Now we'll talk about the ones that are more sincerely given but erroneous. And here's the story of Anthony Sadolaro, recalled by Life, whose story of recovery from cancer, and he was relying on macrobiotic diets, but he was He died of his cancer a few years after this particular story. On the right side here is Kathy Keaton. And Kathy Keaton, let me read to you at the bottom of the page. This is from August 6th, 1997, and it says, the cancer-stricken wife of Penthouse publisher Bob Guccione is shopping a book about how she survived the disease with a drug she says the federal government is suppressing. Keaton, the beautiful South African exec who has run the business side of Guccione's operation for nearly 20 years, wants to call her book 6 Weeks to Live, How I Defied the Odds with a $3 a Week Cancer Treatment. The drug is called hydrazine sulfate, a component of rocket fuel, and Keaton has been telling anyone who will listen that it halted her breast cancer in its tracks 2 years ago. In January, she taped she was a guest on the Montel Williams show. She taped it in January and appeared on it in February, and got considerable attention from that, of course, and led people to believe that although she had also had some tamoxifen and other therapy, that she had been given 6 weeks to live, but here she was alive more than 2 years later. Her story was featured in the September issue of Penthouse magazine. And the story in that Penthouse magazine was called the $200 billion, it was on 2 pages, $200 billion scam by Jeff Feynman. And at the bottom it says, Kathy Keaton's successful battle against cancer is more than personal good news. It has blown open a Washington scandal of astonishing proportions. And to give you an idea of her devotion to this particular treatment, the article includes this particular diary entry. Now, Joe Gold is mentioned here. Joe Gold is the promoter of hydrazine sulfate and is the champion of this particular treatment. Hydrazine sulfate, by the way, is a component of rocket fuel, and it's an industrial solvent as well. And she says, Joe, and you will recognize what she is paraphrasing here. Joe Gold is my shepherd, I shall not die. He leadeth me through green pastures. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of the crab. You may recognize that the crab means, it's like cancer the crab. His care and his call shall comfort me, and I shall dwell in the house of hydrazine forever. Now, this illustrates just how devoted people get to various kinds of treatments that they are led to believe are going to have powerful effects. And the more demanding the regimen, the more unusual it is. Once people are invested in it, it's very hard for them to let go. There are forces of cognitive dissonance. So even if things don't seem to be working out, people can find ways to rationalize sticking with various kinds of treatments. There's confirmation bias, which is essentially accentuating the positive and tuning out the negative. But this was her commitment in the article. And I didn't check today, but I checked a few months ago. The article was reprinted at a particular website, and there's the link, mindbodyhealth.com. And so if you really interested, you can read the article there. The last sentence in the article is that every cancer patient on this planet should have the same chance that saved Kathy Keaton. And then I'll give you a little description of the particular website that has reproduced this particular article. It has the article there, and there's, just as it appeared in the September 1997 issue of Penthouse magazine. And here, September 23rd, 1997, is Kathy Keaton's obituary in the New York Times. There's no mention of this at that MindBody, that little sales-oriented website. The story of what went on with Kathy Keaton was told by me in detail in Priorities for Health magazine. And I've been updating the version when new developments have come up related to hydrazine sulfate at the website cancertreatmentwatch.org, and it's under the title Penthouse's Promotion of Hydrazine Sulfate. And one of the updates is a case report, and there's been more than one case report along these lines. Case reports, remember, are instant descriptions of particular person's progress or problems related to health with lots of documentation. And they can be very influential in helping us decide what works and what is a threat to our health. A very compelling case report, especially when we consider other evidence, can be very important in determining what we do. Very dramatic case reports with unprecedented results that are truly unprecedented really should be taken very seriously. So here's the epilogue, and this is in the Annals of Internal Medicine. And this particular case report describes somebody who developed fatal liver and kidney failure, and what he did was followed the protocol for taking hydrazine sulfate that Keaton had publicized on her website, kathykeaton.com. There have been other case reports. I don't think that this particular kind of risk is a frequent occurrence with hydrazine sulfate. However, in the absence of evidence, and it has not fared well in clinical trials, in the absence of evidence, I think it's a problem to recommend hydrazine sulfate. How did she die? Reuters explained it. She died during surgery to remove tumorous tissue from her upper digestive system. And on the Montel Williams show, Joe Gold had suggested that at least her abdominal disease had all cleared up. Tissue required a surgical bypass, which, due to a number of unforeseen complications, resulted in her death. The problem with testimonials is they aren't the score. In other words, they don't tell you the whole story. And according to Victor Herbert and Tracy Caston, that's Victor Herbert, the difference between promoters of quack remedies and promoters of legitimate remedies is that only the latter keep score. So there are a number of reasons why testimonials can be misleading. Now, she was given 6 weeks to live, Kathy Keaton, right? Well, she lived 2.5 years. Didn't she do really well? Well, I don't know where it got 6 weeks to live, because she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and the 5-year survival rate at the time was well over 12%. It was about 20%. So she really didn't survive any longer than would be expected. So some of the reasons that testimonials don't keep score and why they're misleading is that people may be unfamiliar with the natural course of disease. There's lots of variation. She may have been told that she could be dead in 6 weeks, but clearly people live for years. What else could be going on? Well, there may be diagnostic error before and after treatment. People who make diagnoses are sometimes wrong. Sometimes the diagnosis is overly pessimistic. Sometimes the prognosis is overly pessimistic. Prognosis refers to what the likely course is going to be. Some people mistake being satisfied and feeling good with changes in the course of disease. Sometimes quack promoters use misleading outcome measures and use tests that are invalid and then tell people that the results they're experiencing are favorable based on misleading outcome measures. Many people refer to healing in their testimonials. They are led to believe that there's some kind of healing. The word healing is very, very vague, and it may not refer in any way to an improvement, an objective improvement in health status. So testimonials could also omit prior, concurrent, or subsequent treatments. So other thing that often, and this is the notion of confirmation bias. And it's the root of all superstition. It's only paying attention to the hits, not to the misses. And this happens with why people get persuaded by psychics who, supposed psychics, I should say, who are able to say, for example, talk to people's deceased loved ones. And what they do is they say lots of things, and occasionally they say something that's right. And people are very impressed by those hits, but they tend to lose track of the misses. Here's a little simplified outcome table to understand the nature of the need to keep score. Somebody uses a special method and they have a good outcome. Well, they may have a good outcome because in many cases health problems get better on their own. So if you only pay attention to those who use a special outcome and use a special method and have a good outcome, you're only getting part of the story. You are ignoring all those who didn't use the special method and who didn't get a good outcome, or who got a good outcome without using the special method. And you're also not keeping score by ignoring those who used the special method, but didn't get a good outcome. There's a recent study that I haven't been able to get access to, but it suggests that from an educational point of view, if you can explain to people examples of people in these other cells, they may have a better understanding of how they can be misled. Well, I think it's about time I sum up here. By the way, in the notes that I have sent around to you, I have a summary of characteristics of scientific evidence that become very important to consider. So I'll let you read those there. If you're interested in these kinds of stories and interested in the kinds of things that get getting promoted in the health marketplace, you can sign up for a free weekly e-newsletter, Consumer Health Digest, and we have about 11,000 subscribers, so you may want to join in there.
I think you did a good job of stopping in a timely manner. I know you warned me from the beginning that you've got a lot of material, and boy, you certainly do. I'm wondering, and we have a bunch of questions here, I'm wondering how long, I mean, obviously you've been following this sort of craziness for quite some time. How long has this been sort of in the forefront of your mind?
Since about 87.
Wow.
1987.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, I think
1987, I put on my first conference on health fraud.
Really? That's amazing. I think this webinar, I mean, obviously it's being recorded. I think it's going to be great for people, I mean, for consumer education, and also just to remind professionals that, you know, I mean, we know you don't buy it because it's there, but it's always a good reminder. Let's see, a couple questions from Bill McPeck. Wondering if the Journal of Complementary and Alternative Medicine is a peer-reviewed journal, and yes. Wow, and what does that say about peer-reviewed journals? That's really disturbing.
Yes, it's a peer-reviewed journal.
That's amazing.
But I mean, peer-reviewed journals are only as good as what the peers do, and the best journals have peer-reviewed articles that are shockingly, people get very surprised when very shockingly bad articles get published in peer-reviewed journals. What comes to mind is that Andrew Wakefield article that was published in The Lancet that has been retracted and that has been exposed as fraudulent. And that, all sorts of peer review is not foolproof.
Well, let's see. Yeah, Bill Pex has another great presentation. Thanks, Bill. Also saying current marketing best practices suggest that stories are the best way to market our health promotion programs. As a health promotion professional, how do you reconcile this with what you're saying versus accepting best practices? It's kind of a tough one. How do you tell stories?
Right. I think it's, again, I think what are the claims being made defensible? I mean, I think that's how you reconcile it. If you're simply hyping what you're doing, if you're sensationalizing what you're doing, it's a problem. If the stories really reflect what you're doing, I think it can be defensible.
Yeah, that's another really good point.
I mean, normally when I do this presentation, I talk about what kinds of testimonials am I focusing on. And the ones that I focus on are those where people are making claims related to safety and efficacy. Efficacy is, or at least efficacy is things working under ideal conditions. Effectiveness is working in the real world. But I'm not as concerned about the kind of testimonial where you're asking about somebody for the quality of service that they're getting. For example, we recommend if you want to try to, for example, find a primary care practitioner for yourself, it's a very good idea to ask other people about what kind of, were you being treated with courtesy in the office? Was it clean? I mean, people, if you have somebody who's basically credible, though that kind of first-person information can be, very helpful. So it's the kind of information where, people don't realize the kinds of things that make it difficult to judge whether something is working and is not hurting you. That's a lot harder to judge. But even then, some people, will say, hey, this office was really, really nice to me, and then you go and they're really rude to you. That could happen. But I think that is general. It's not foolproof. But I think it's reasonable to get first-person accounts of people's experiences with services and providers and how they're treated, issues of quality in delivery.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. Bill was wondering also, he said that he suggests to his clients that they only read or consider legitimate, I guess, information from .edu or .org websites, and wondering, is there something else in addition to that he should be saying to them to help them discern fraud?
Well, one of the appealing things of testimonials is that we're all dealing with information overload. I mean, that's what the appeal is. Sorting out health information is very difficult, and it's very important. In our book, Consumer Health: A Guide to Intelligent Decisions, I think we send a pretty clear message that the sources of health information are overwhelming. The research literature is overwhelming. And it's important to rely on what might be called credible information filters. And let me recommend a website that's very useful in that regard. I mean, we have, for example, in our appendix of our Consumer Health, we have links to we have lists of what we consider credible sources of information. But much of that information is available at a website called ihealthpilot.org, also operated by Stephen Barrett, whose name is on the screen. And he, it's a nice summary. And again, it's not foolproof in any way, shape, or form. But we should generally not be suggesting to people to look at particular research studies because it's too confusing. The literature is often conflicting. It's difficult to sort out methodology. It's even difficult to rely on systematic reviews. So consumers and health professionals need filters. And ihealthpilot.org is a nice guide to credible information sources.
That sounds like a pretty handy resource.
Yeah.
Don Ardell has a question, and I'm going to try unmuting his microphone and see if he can ask you or comment directly, and let's see how it goes. Don, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear him, Bill?
Yes.
Super.
Good. Well, I put it up there, but I'll read it real quickly. In religion and politics, people's beliefs and convictions are in almost every case gotten at second hand and without examination, personal up close. As with PC-laden company health promotion programs, little attention is given today to beliefs and convictions that are propped up by testimonials based on the supernatural as well as the paranormal and pseudoscientific. The question is, do you think wellness professionals should introduce topics related to angels and demons, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, past lives, heaven and hell, auras, and all of that? Or is there too little freedom at the workplace to discuss topics like this because of PC issues and fear that controversy might cause problems at the workplace? We don't want to get anybody upset.
I really like your question because I don't know the answer.
Okay, that's good enough.
I really don't know. Because I don't.
It'd be good to have a discussion about it, wouldn't it? At the workplace.
I really don't know. I don't. I don't do workplace wellness work, so
yeah, sure. How could you know?
Yeah.
So I don't think I think it's an interesting question, but
well,
I like to attract people to skepticism one way or another. I don't know workplace or the form of workplace wellness.
Yeah, well, asking interesting questions makes the programs more interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do a lot of work in terms of helping people notice the pitfalls in the health marketplace, and that involves healthy skepticism. So I think there's plenty to focus on with that.
Okay, thanks, Don.
Sure.
Okay, quickly, let's see, a couple more questions. Any advice on how to deal with activist group who only see one side of the coin?
Oh, wow.
I know, not a quick question, not necessarily a quick answer.
Well, I've come to believe that in any kind of educational work that I do, I've come to think of my audience in terms of three basic groups. Group one are the people who kind of already see what I think is important and are interested in skeptical inquiry and are interested in developing their tools that way, and often they already know everything I'm telling them. That's one group. Another group are the people who are open-minded, who haven't particularly been exposed to the kinds of issues that I'm pointing out, and I can reach them, and that's fine. And then there's the third group where, and within groups, obviously, there's plenty of variation. But then the third group is really beyond my reach. There is so much. I mean, I'm thinking of the anti-vaccine activists, for example, I mean, which are particularly of concern, and any kind of conflicting evidence to when somebody holds a belief so strongly, when they see conflicting evidence, or the lack of evidence for what they're exposed to, they're always going to think in terms there's some kind of conspiracy to keep the evidence away. So I don't know how to reach certain groups. I mean, I think it's beyond. I don't think there's those who are not going to reach. I think you try to build trust and maybe keep lines of communication open if you're actually interacting with people, and be courteous. But there's people who do the kind of work I do get a lot of hate mail. The more prominent ones get death threats. But they get a lot of, I'm not, the prominent people who are promoting healthy skepticism get a lot of heat, and it's very hard.
Well, I'm glad you only get enough heat to keep your feet warm.
I don't do this very much. So.
Ah, that's good.
I do a lot of teaching.
Excellent. Well, I think with that, but thanks so much, Bill. I'm so glad that you were here, and what a great day to do this on. I think that's all
I'd like to say we won't get fooled again, but we're all prone to it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Prone to deception and misperception.
Yeah. Was it the Rolling Stones? I forget. Anyway.
The Who, we won't get fooled.
The Who. You're right. It's the Who. Darn. Anyway, that's it. On that note, we are so done. You guys have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Thanks again, Bill. You're awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.